Chapter 26. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Holy moly, the woman shouted. She was entering the shower I'd just left, and it was turned to the coldest temperature. She was mad about that. I always forgot to put it back to an average temperature after I went into the shower. Sorry, I said, but I wasn't really sorry for her. I was taking a cold shower to stimulate hormesis, and she got a small piece of it. Perhaps that wasn't such a bad thing for her. I mentioned before the quote from Nietzsche that titles this chapter of the book. For me, it sums up hormesis. To refresh your memory, hormesis is a concept of how temporary stressors work to grow your mitochondria. Hormesis is the act of increasing the number of big, healthy, and powerfully resilient to stressors, mitochondria, in your body. I believe that hormesis is the key to becoming stress-proof, not only on a physical level, but also a mental one. Most people feel an increase in their levels of mental stress when they worry about something or feel insecure. I can only relate to this myself, but I had a feeling that I could better handle mental stress while I was going through a period of systematic mild stressors, hormesis. I guess hormesis forced me to get out of my head. Research indicates that the number of mitochondria in your body will shrink by half after 40 to 80 years of age if you don't engage in multiple forms of hormesis. Why aren't doctors and health gurus talking about this? You can eat the healthiest diet, reduce stress, sleep well, and so on, but if you do not make a habit of hormesis in your daily life, the number and resilience of your mitochondria will shrink. Hence, you will get tired more often. Challenges or stressors are what works to create a robust and healthy body and brain. Harshness in specific doses is useful if you want to live a healthier and longer life. We live in a pampered and spoiled era that we might describe as anti-hormesis. Food is available whenever we want it, especially junk food, without life-enhancing phytochemicals. We can run our offices and perhaps the world while sitting on our butts. We hardly ever go out of our comfort zone. Our earliest ancestors, on the contrary, lived in a world where hunting and walking was part of their daily routine. Food and plants were not always available every day. They may have created a state of scarcity, fasting. They were also exposed to heat and cold, beneficial stressors that made our ancestors more robust and resilient. After reading about hormetic activity, I decided to implement those principles in my life. Remember though, if you choose to do this, you must first pay attention to circadian rhythm and sleep, and change your food habits if necessary. Start gently, with the consent of your doctor. Too much stress can have the opposite of the desired effect. Hormesis through exercise. Sprint interval training wasn't for me since I couldn't run at that time, but I could use the Stairmaster to get high-intensity training, HIT. I got on a Stairmaster for 5 minutes during the day, 1 minute at full speed, 1 minute at rest, and then I repeated it. Sometimes I returned to the machine several times during the day. Why didn't I go for one longer session per day? Because in my carefully formulated theory, I reasoned that our ancestors didn't know ahead of time when they would need to run. Relating that to my Stairmaster use, I figured it would be best to do that level of activity for several days, 2 to 3 times per day, and then stay off the machine for a couple of days. That worked for me. I tried other variations, doing 4 minutes of intense Stairmaster training once a week in bursts of 20 seconds of intense exercise and then 10 seconds of rest. I almost threw up afterward. I suggest that you don't try this at home without a physical therapist. Much later, I went running for 30 seconds and then rested for 30 seconds. Yes, I can now run a little bit. It took me 2 years' practice to do this. If you can't walk yet, try using a small trampoline. You can stand up, try to get one with a handle on it, or kneel on it, giving almost the same effect. Or You can jump up and down a little bit while on your knees. Hormesis through intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting increases the neurogenesis of mitochondria, so I periodically did not have breakfast before I worked out for the first time during the day. The reason for that was to encourage mitochondrial biogenesis. The word periodically is vital to note because your body adapts to anything. If you want the effect of mitochondrial biogenesis, you need to do it periodically as I did. Periods of intermittent fasting also work because it increases autophagy, cell recycling. Intermittent fasting should be followed by HIIT, high-intensity training, exercise, and shifting back and forth between autophagy and building mode is key. If you combine that with the circadian rhythm habits explained in the chapter titled Sleep, you have a powerful way to increase autophagy. And remember, increased autophagy keeps you young. Hormesis through xenohormesis. What doesn't kill plants makes us stronger as well. I talk about this in previous chapters, but let me elaborate. Plants contain phytochemicals, which are beneficial for human health. How do these plants get phytochemicals? Through xenohormesis, environmentally stressed plants produce bioactive compounds, oxidants, that can transfer stress resistance and survival benefits to the animals and humans that consume them. So, plants are not just antioxidants. Hormesis through hot or cold. 2 or 3 times a week, all year round, I went to a sauna with an outdoor swimming pool. I went into the sauna for 15 to 20 minutes and, immediately afterward, went outside and got in the pool, even in winter. The pool contained warm water, but after I emerged from the warmth, I stayed out in the cold air for 3 minutes or more. I also took cold showers 3 times a week after learning that exposure to cold temperatures stimulates mitochondrial growth. Immediately after my cold shower in the morning, I was so energized. I felt like I could rule the world. I also tried walking barefoot through the dunes when it was cold. My feet felt like blocks of ice while I was doing it, but afterward, they felt warm and pleasantly worn out. Walking on a beach covered with cold stones hurt quite a lot, especially in my left foot that lacked muscle tone. However, it resulted in a stimulating and long-lasting sensation, as if I could still feel the stones beneath my feet for hours afterward when I was sitting in the car. Hormesis through hypoxia. In South Korea, there are women, some in their 80s, who dive to catch seaweed and shellfish for food. They hold their breath for about 3 minutes during these dives and are among the longest living people on Earth. Researchers in Russia and Ukraine have also been looking at the use of breathing methods to enhance health and performance. At present, IHT, intermittent hypoxic training, is primarily known in the athletic world where it has been successfully adopted by athletes to improve their fitness and athletic performance. By using specific breathing techniques, your body can induce low oxygen levels in the blood, cells, and mitochondria. That way, the mitochondria is trained to increasingly apply oxygen more efficiently and accurately. I used some of these techniques while walking. As I walked in the forest near our home, I practiced holding my breath to see how many steps I could take before inhaling again. The forest was also on a hill, so my body was further challenged by going up that incline and giving my hamstrings a good workout. Also, when I practice yoga, I try to incorporate breathing techniques like pranayama to enhance the experience. Most of us have a hormetic-free lifestyle, and that makes us fragile. When people get sick, other than inherited illnesses, they usually think that a visit to the doctor will solve the issue, as long as they are given a prescription for some type of medicine. I do honestly believe that the medical profession is wonderful, but there is a big difference between the phrase, "I am studying medicine," and the phrase that I would like to hear more often, "I am studying health." My reluctance to feel comfortable about certain parts of the medical profession does not include people who work in the emergency unit of a hospital, research specialists, and those who have a sympathetic heart in their work. Perhaps doctors should instead be teaching their patients about the circadian rhythm, hormesis, and the gut-brain connection and its relationship to illness, and that antibiotics destroy the good bacteria that are important to your brain and immune system. Of course, I know that antibiotics are still essential for life-threatening infections. I have no questions about or issues with that. But our bodies also have many natural defenses that we shouldn't meddle with unnaturally. I think the pharmaceutical industry has far too much influence in the hospital. I'm also aware that some people will think or say aloud, "Never mind, she's just a woman from Sweden who thinks she's going to change up medical practice. She doesn't even have a medical degree." I have no illusions that I will be able to change that type of opinion about me, but I also wish some doctors were less rigid or stuck in their ways. It would help if they read more about the latest research outside of their limited fields of specialization instead of playing God. None of the doctors I met following my stroke told me about neuroplasticity. I had to read about it for myself. Instead, every single one of them told me the same thing, that hardly any recovery would take place after the initial 6 months from the time of the stroke. But enough about that. Who do I have confidence in? I believe in those scientists who think that a lack of hormesis is making us fragile and prone to disease. As parents, we do the same when we're too quick to rush to the medicine cabinet for a child with a fever. A fever, not surprisingly, indicates that your child is fighting off some kind of infection, such as a simple cold, the flu, or an ear infection. It's not an illness in itself. In fact, a fever may do some good. A study published in the February 2004 Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology found that children who ran a fever during their first year of life were less likely to develop allergies later in childhood than children who did not have a fever. And what about the disinfectant sprays and gels we tell our children to use? I was guilty of that too. Before I read that without exposure to dirt and germs early in life, the immune system doesn't learn how to control its reactions to everyday invaders, such as dust and pollen. This obsession with disinfecting everything can lead the immune system to misfire later in life, initiating allergies and other illnesses. Our children are too clean for their own good. Years ago, when we lived in Amsterdam, I remember 1-year-old Martin sucking on one of the plastic safety handles inside the streetcar. I was immediately shocked and cleaned his mouth thoroughly when we got home. Now I realize that there may be an excellent reason why children seem so eager to stuff everything and anything in their mouths. It may be due to a natural urge, and because it is good for the immune system. It goes against the Zeitgeist, a German word for our belief system, to think the way I do now, and that makes some people uncomfortable. I believe our Zeitgeist has to change. Surely it's better to not be inside all day and all night in a perfectly climate-controlled room, but outside as often as possible in the heat and/or cold. I would like to finish with a question from the book Anti-Fragile by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. If someone put you in a box, what is written on your box? Fragile or anti-fragile?